welcome to the 114th episode of the Sales Podcast. I'm Wes Schaefer, the Sales Whisperer, your host. And as I sit here, I see the dog groomer pulling up in their little mobile van. And my big 110-pound lab goes charging out the door, sees who it is, comes to a screeching halt, kind of like Scooby, and turns back around and hightails it into the house. So if you ever want to rob me, then just pull up when I'm gone and pull up in a dog grooming van. And my dog will not mess with you. So there you have it. But please don't rob me. I have too many kids to feed. Hey, thanks for listening. Today we've got Suzanne Masefield. She was referred to me by a friend of mine in the Infusionsoft community, Miss Sarah Laws. And Suzanne is a body language expert. She's an expert in a lot of things. She's got a fantastic background we'll get into, but she's a counselor, clinical hypnotist, a micro-expression trainer. We get into a lot of things about making a good first impression, reading your own state, right? Your own feelings, taking note of how you are, because at the end of the day, it boils down to you. Right? You can't read others. You can't connect with others. You can't make that first impression. You can't be totally observant of your surroundings, your situation, unless you are calm. So we get into that because that directly leads into how well you can discern in others what's really going on. We talk about looking at clusters. We get into tonality, tone of voice, and this is especially important for women. She gets into. And we talk about being present and how this can really help shape the outcome. And I'll talk about that after this interview. So without further ado, let's jump right into it and bring in Suzanne Masefield. Suzanne Masefield, someone who talks funnier than me, all the way from Auckland, New Zealand. Welcome to the Sales Podcast. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for inviting me, Wes. It's really cool to be here with you.
All right. So everybody, we will see how this comes out. I'll have to see how I look. We do this on Skype, but usually I just do the audio, but we have a body language expert. So she reached through Skype and turned on my camera. So now this may be the first video episode of the Sales Podcast ever. And Suzanne promised she would deliver the goods. So, with that introduction, no pressure, would you mind just tell us a little bit about yourself, Suzanne, what it is you do, and we'll get, like I say, we'll go down the rabbit hole.
Okay, well, I'm what's called a body-mind analyst. So, basically, it's a body language specialist. But my background's in psychology, counseling. I'm a micro-expressions trainer, so I read the facial expressions on people's faces, the emotions that they present.
Okay.
And I'm a clinical hypnotherapist and a counselor.
Wow.
And I also do a lot of training, and I run a lot of executive leadership coaching. So I incorporate that in all of the work that I do. So it's really about reading people and getting that sense of connection with them through their body language, but also just understanding what's really going on for someone from their body language.
Okay. All right. Well, I need to turn the camera off now. I do not want you. I have some friends that do handwriting analysis, and so I type all of my letters to them. I never send them a handwritten card.
Oh, that's cheating.
They're going to say, "Oh, Wes has been drinking a lot lately." No, I haven't. I was in a car when I wrote that letter. Really, I'm not that bad. So can people... Can they become good or effective at studying body language? From a sales marketing standpoint, can they get good quickly, or is this like a lifetime of learning? I mean, I know you've got programs, but what can people pick up? We have 30 minutes, 45 minutes. These go. Some go up to an hour, but usually 30, 40 minutes. There's some things we can give our listeners that they can put into practice right away.
Yes, definitely. I mean, the courses that I run when I actually work with companies, I work with a lot of corporates, a lot of salespeople, leaders, wanting to get more team synergy or getting a better connection with their clients and being able to read whether they've got an objection coming up, all those types of things. And, those courses range from sort of an hour keynote presentation to a 2 hour to half a day to a day. So, yeah, most of the people that I work with are very, very busy. So what I've done is created little simple formats that people can remember when they go into interviews or when they go in to interview someone or a sales meeting or anything like that, where they really need to read the other person and where they're coming from, but not just read the person, be able to adapt to a different situation so they can more positively influence the situation.
Right.
And the first thing you need to do if you're going to read someone clearly is manage your own state.
Okay.
Because until you do that, you're really not going to read someone else clearly. You could potentially be in reaction rather than in response.
Okay.
You know, if you've got a meeting that you're coming up to and it's a big deal, you know, it could be a couple of $100,000 or something like that that is on the line, there could be a bit of anxiety there. You know, we live in a pretty stressful world. So all my programs basically incorporate manage self first. You know, I have a very set sort of little program that we think about, which is the first thing we want to do is be prepared. And, you know, often we prepare with scripts, with, you know, being able to, what's our pitch, what's our presentation. We're really, really clear about the words that we're actually using, but we're not always sure about how do I feel about this? You know, how am I going to come across? And, you know, have I had an argument with the husband or wife, or, you know, did I just race here and I'm really, really stressed? And
Not me. I'm the model husband. But anyway.
Well, that's really good. Obviously, you're already prepared.
Well, you and I are a lot alike because years ago, the very first product I ever created was the 7 Deadly Sins of Selling. And do you know who Annie Oakley is? Do you ever hear the Old West stories here in the U.S.?
With the guns.
Yep, she was like a trick shot artist. You know, she'd hold a mirror up and shoot over her shoulder and stuff. So I always say Annie Oakley-itis was the first one. That means shooting from the hip.
Yeah.
You know, not being prepared, just winging it.
Yeah.
And then you're all from there on. You're on defensive, right? You're in that reaction mode.
Yeah, totally.
You're behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, let's face it, the world we live in is very, very fast paced nowadays. You know, we live in a fantastic world where technology's, you know, it's amazing. We can communicate around the world like we're doing, you know, in a nanosecond. Yet, you know, that technology has also given us a bit of a disconnection. Sometimes we can spend so much time on emails or, you know, writing or just technology that when we actually go to meet a real person, you know, we've got a sort of, it's a different mode. So it's almost like having a debrief in between, you know, and I'm a great believer in that. It's like even, you know, when you come home from work, having a debrief before you walk into your home, because you want to be in a different space.
Right. So
the processes that I use, just simple little things that people can do, but just, it's all about awareness. It's all about what's happening for me, you know, and how am I coming across to another person? Then you're in a clearer space to be able to say, okay, you know, what's going on with this person? Now, you know, the natural thing that human beings do, and that we're taught this from a very early age, is actually to observe the other person, not to think too much about what's going on with us. But it's sort of like having a house without a foundation if you go from that place.
Right.
So, you know, be prepared is one of the most important things that I think of. And in the Signals to Success program, we actually have, you know, a process, which is be prepared, first impressions, look at the first impression you're coming across, and then you can look at how they're coming across. Be the influencer. Where do you need to stand and sit to be an influencer? Right. You know, how do you need to move your body? What's your tone doing to have the best effect, basically?
Right.
And then key thing is building relationships. You know, I mean, you know, you're really good at this. You're a people person, but not everybody is, you know, particularly technical people.
I don't really like people. No.
You don't really like them?
No. Anyway.
Your face does not show that, Wes. I hate to tell you.
I don't really like people. Okay.
Your face tells me that you wouldn't suffer fools gladly.
Oh, yes. Okay, you're hired. You're good.
So, you know.
Okay, why do you say that?
Okay, what's happening, the shape of your nose, how your nose is. I don't teach this. This is, you know, years and years of training, but different shapes of people's faces, you know, where the eyes are positioned, how they move their face, it tells me a lot about what's happening for their personality as well as what's going on in the moment.
Right.
So somebody wouldn't pull the wool over your eyes from a money point of view. That's something you'd be really hot on. And that's different. The shape of your nose and where your eyes and nose are positioned. Sounds a bit strange, but it's amazing how accurate this is.
So are you saying physically, not like how I react, but just...
Yeah, physically. So that's actually the body-mind analysis, which I'm trained in, which is the combination of, the physiology that comes down through our family and behavioral patterns is, and it's like what happens when people start losing weight. Different aspects change in their personality, and it works either way. So we can actually change how we feel with our posture and, those types of things. And this is all now being proved scientifically, which is fantastic because it's, it's something I've been doing this for 20 years, but the science is now backing up what we've been training, which is really huge. And Harvard University particularly have done a lot of research in, how we stand and the impact that has on our confidence level, but also our chemicals in our body, our testosterone level and our cortisol level. Because let's face it, if we go into a situation we want to feel really powerful, which we do in a sales meeting, or, if we're a leader running our team or anything like that, or we're an entrepreneur that we want to pitch our plan or whatever it is, or our product, we want to feel really empowered and confident, but also charismatic and warm. Because unless someone is attracted to you and likes you, they're not going to buy from you, basically. You can have the best product in the world. If they don't like you, they're not going to buy from you. Right. So that's all part of, that all comes across in body language. And we put so much stake on words, but words are actually only responsible for about 7% of the messages we send and receive to other people. Our tone of voice is really important. And, if I started talking to you and saying, oh, it's really great to meet you. It's a really great day, and I'm fantastic at what I do. You're not really going to take me too seriously.
I'd have to say, oh, we have some static. We have solar flares. I'm going to have to call you back.
There you go. And that's exactly what happens. And, this is something for women particularly to think about in business, because this is actually a scientific, documented process that after a certain pitch, as women get higher up, they start to talk, men's brains actually switch off. And what happens when we're nervous or anxious or, we want to get our point across, often we can go up like this. Even men, you can hear that intonation going up, and that's when people start to switch off and they start to hear this person's not confident, or, this person is not important for me to listen to. Right. So lowering and slowing down your tone and your volume is really, really important, particularly when you make a statement like, for instance, your price. Right. And something that people make a lot of mistakes with is when they state their price, they go up when they're a little bit unsure about how the other person feels. So it's sort of like, how much does it cost? Oh, it's only $50. $50 instead of $50.
Right.
Can you hear the difference?
Right.
So from a confidence point of view, you really want to have it at it's $50. So it's a statement as opposed to a question inflection. Right. People lose a lot of sales just by that, because the other person hears they're uncertain, and so they can wiggle around. Right. And it's like, the other thing is being open, actually having open palms when you're talking to people is really important. And if the other person is saying to you, this is my final price, and they've got their palms open, a pretty good chance you're going to be able to sway them. Whereas if their palms are face down, that is their final decision. So there's subtle little things that are really important. But again, when you're actually selling to someone, if you start selling to them and using your hands like this, it's very dominant. It's not attractive. People aren't going to warm to you. They're going to feel that you're trying to tell them what to do. And this is about this engagement, getting people really engaged. So we think about the posture, and particularly if you're dealing with any, Chinese, Japanese, any of the Asian community, with the multicultural world we're living in now, posture is absolutely pivotal, because they see it as a sign of leadership. if you're all slouched down like this, which again can be the case, you might have a backache, might have a back problem, or might just be stressed, where that will be seen as, this all sounds quite logical, but the thing is that most people have no clue how they're coming across to another person.
Right.
And that actually is impacting on not just how the other person sees them, but from a scientific point of view. They did these tests at Harvard where they actually had people in what they call a power pose. So they put the hands on the hips and stand with their legs apart for 2 minutes. And what this does is it increases testosterone level by up to 25%.
Wow.
Yeah, guys love that one. So testosterone is what's responsible for us feeling powerful and confident and actually being able to take more risks. So, if you're going into a sales or a business environment, it's pivotal that you have that at maximum potential whilst remaining centered, not coming across as an arrogant so-and-so, which, again, can happen in a sales environment. People.
So at the end of this, I need to stand up and say, buy my stuff after listening to the podcast?
No, you definitely don't want to do that.
Oh.
No. If you do that, you will definitely lose your client. Pretty good chance you'll lose your client. You want to do this before you go into the meeting.
All right. Now you tell me. All right.
2 minutes before you go in, pop off to the bathroom or go for a walk. So it is all it takes, 2 minutes. But not only does it increase the testosterone level, it lowers cortisol, which cortisol is actually the stress hormone.
Right.
And if we go into meetings, even if we feel like we're bulletproof, there's always a little element of stress. It could even be just from rushing from somewhere.
Right.
So, if you're feeling stressed and you want to relax a bit more, it's a really good get into a power pose, 2 minutes. They did saliva tests, heart rate tests, respiratory rate tests, and they found that it lowered the cortisol rates, considerably,
right,
and increased testosterone. And the opposite is also true. So in other words, if you hunch up, which let's face it, when we're on the computer or doing work, a lot of the time we are like this. We have rounded shoulders from being on the computer and things like that. Now, just by putting ourselves into what they call a low power pose, that increases our stress level and our cortisol. So, just being mindful and aware of this. It's all about awareness, being aware of what is my body position? What's,
right,
what do I need to do? How can I change that so that if you've been working on the computer for a couple of hours, get up, stand, do a power pose for 2 minutes, take a breath. It'll actually start to change how well you're focusing, how much you're absorbing information, and, how effective you are. And this is all about increasing performance, That's really important.
Right. Well, it's interesting. I've always heard, and I teach, in sales, say, unless you're ready and willing to walk away from a sale, you're not ready to enter the negotiations because you're too emotionally tied to it. And that's basically what you're saying. You got to be prepared, change your posture, change your physiology. I mean, literally convince yourself, you know what, I will live even if I don't make this sale. You know, maybe I won't get the commission. Or, maybe I'll miss a car payment. I will live, and you literally have to calm yourself down. And it's amazing. You're telling us now physiologically why that is.
Yeah.
Of how we connect with that other person.
Yeah, totally. I mean, the thing is, we don't want to just come across as powerful and confident, because if the other person's feeling a bit insecure, which can happen in any situation, or they're having a rough day, you don't know what's going on in somebody's head at the end of the day, then you need to be able to connect to them. So by you getting present, which is, I'm such a believer in this, being present, not having an attachment to the outcome, which is exactly what you're talking about. You can only do that if you center your emotional state. Mm-hmm. Now, you can do this very quickly with this, a 2-minute process by actually changing, your body position, being more open, because, again, science shows us that when we have open body language as opposed to being closed, we're absorbing up to 40% more information. So we can actually see what's going on around us much better. So we can think, okay, something happened there. Something happened with that person. They put something on their face, their hand to their face, or saying, I wonder what that was about. Whereas if we're so busy delivering our pitch, we miss those opportunities.
Right.
And, being the sales guru, at the end of the day, you're so aware that the most important thing when you're with a client and you're selling to someone is to listen.
Right.
Really to listen and to know when to be quiet. And there's body language cues that can tell you that, interruption cues, where somebody starts to put their hand to their face when you're delivering something. They've got a lot of mental and emotional processing going on.
Right.
A lot of people say, when somebody touches their nose, it's like the Pinocchio thing.
Right.
That it means that they're actually telling a lie, or they think you're lying, or they're a bit unsure. It could be any of those things. And there's a lot of very specific, context. You need to think of the context to actually be able to read that. Right. But if somebody starts putting their hand to their face, over their mouth, their eyes, their nose, anything where you're delivering a sales pitch, there's a potential objection there.
Right.
So the key is to be present enough in yourself that you're not keeping talking, that you actually reckon this is a potential interruption cue.
Right.
So at that point, you might want to say, I'd be really interested to hear what you have to say about that, or what your thoughts are around that, just to see what's actually happening. I notice you look a little bit uncomfortable. Is
Right.
there a question I can answer for you? And you can see that directly from what they're doing with their body language.
Right.
But if you're just in your own space,
Oblivious.
Yeah, you're not going to see that. So getting prepared within yourself is absolutely pivotal, whatever you're doing, really, at the end of the day. And to me, that's the foundation. So that means, what's my attitude before I go into a situation? What's my intention? What do I want the outcome to be, even if I've got no attachment to it? And what's my motivation? Is it all about me? I'm a great believer in let's see how we can make this a win-win.
Right.
So we look at the whole process when we're actually doing it's body language analysis. I call it conscious communication. So it's really exciting because it's
I got to write that down.
Yeah, simple little things that people can actually, do very, very easily and quickly. People say to me, isn't this faking it? And it's like, well, as you start to change by doing some of these simple things, like being more open with your hand gestures, actually offering something when you talk to someone, using your hands. When you show your hands, people are more likely to trust you than if you have your hands down here and you're just talking like this.
Right.
I'm not talking about waving around, being all, all nice and creative. I'm talking about sort of what we call the Clinton box.
Yeah.
Which is basically, from here down to your waist. You wouldn't go any lower. If I start moving my hands.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
That's the one.
Not one time ever.
Yeah, that's a really great piece of body language footage, actually. I do a lot of analysis of politicians. I've done the last 2 elections over here, and it's always entertaining.
Oh, yeah. What, do you have like a YouTube channel or what?
Yeah, you can have a look. If you just look up Suzanne Masefield, I actually did the last elections with Obama and Romney. I did a little piece on them on our TV channel, but I also did a little body language piece for you guys over there. And also we have, our politicians here. We've had 2 elections go through. And there's a couple of things on confidence, the poise process, things like that. So,
right. Because even the most well-trained, we all have a tell, right? Or, you can't hide every single thing.
No.
Right.
No. And it's not about hiding things. This is about,
Well, politicians are.
Yeah.
I will not raise taxes. And, they're like shaking their head.
You got it. That's it. Exactly. And the thing is that I train the guys at Sky City, which is our casino here, and they actually asked me if I would create some courses specific for the surveillance teams to spot criminal behavior.
Sure.
And now my online course has just gone into China Sands Casino in Macau, which is apparently the largest casino in the world, which is pretty cool. So I'm going over there later in the year, and potentially Singapore as well, which is really cool. And that's, even though in certain cultures, particularly Asian cultures, there's less animation in the face and the body. Right. There's always tells, and less animation is also body language. Mm-hmm. It's often about the transition, not just the position.
Right. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because the little bit that I've researched, because maybe somebody, just their natural position is arms folded.
Exactly.
doesn't necessarily mean they're turned off or opposed to you. But it's that movement. If they drastically change all of a sudden, if they're sitting back kind of relaxed, and then you say something that startles them, and they come up, if they just listen to you just read the text, then they're now open. But no, that transition means maybe they're ready to pounce, right?
That's right. And we have. There's body language rules, I call them simple body language rules, which is start with the baseline. What's their norm? Exactly what you're talking about. If their norm is folded arms, well, they may be a more critical person. They may be shy, or they could be quite introverted. Often people that are introverts, when they're making a decision and trying to think about things, they fold their arms. It's an internal processing.
Right.
So, these are things that tell you something about the person, which is of value. It doesn't necessarily mean it's negative. However, a person will rarely, if ever, buy from you if they are closed.
Right.
So you need to open them up, whether you hand them, a brochure, you get them moving, or ask them questions. If you ask them quite a few questions, it's very hard to stay with your arms closed if you ask them particularly complicated question, because to think, we have to actually open up.
Right.
So, the simple little things that you can think about, it's like someone's closed, but hey, their head's tilted to the side. The situation is clusters, read in three. So heads tilted to the side, they're interested. They're still engaged. Whereas if they're frowning and they've got their arms folded and they're pulling faces and that type of thing, then you've got some objections going on there.
So if they're drinking from a flask, is that like a good thing or a bad thing?
Depends what's in it.
Like, another, please. This is a long one. Oh my gosh. So it's funny. I wrote some notes here because I remember I was in the Air Force. I was in Korea, 93, 94, and I learned how to haggle out there. And then I saw it again. I was in the Middle East a couple years later. But it was the same kind of thing. We'd go out into the city there, right outside the base, and all these shops, all these vendors, and they're selling clothes and jewelry and whatever. And I remember unless I got that vendor to physically, react, like bounce back like I shocked them with a stun gun, then I didn't go low enough, right? So they'd come out, hey, leather jacket, good one-time good deal for you. Normally $400, we'll do it for $300. And if I'd say, oh, you take $250, if they'd go, oh, $275, and it's like, okay, I didn't go low enough. So I'd have to go, $50 and get them to go, like they'd get angry. $50? No way. And I'm like, okay, I know that is truly too low.
Yeah, exactly.
But now I know the boundaries, and we could.
Yeah.
But I could get them to come down from that 300 or 400 and get them closer to maybe 150 or 200 instead of 275.
And, that's a fantastic tactic, is to get that sort of reaction. So, we have conversational techniques that we use so that you can actually initiate someone's body language when we do sales techniques, because that's really useful. Someone could be sat there, particularly if they're an introverted person, and you don't get a lot of movement. If you learn to read micro expressions, which, you really need to be trained to see those, because they pass over the face between a fifth and a 25th second. So it's very fast.
Right.
You'll see something, but you won't necessarily know which emotion it is. So you need to actually get some training around that. And there's lots of different courses. But, if you don't get that sort of reaction, then the best way to initiate that is through exactly what you're saying, is making very bold statements about something and seeing what sort of reaction that you get, because that's going to tell you an awful lot about things. So you initiate body language in other people, which is, you've been doing that. That's fantastic. That's such a great technique. But you've got to read what that body language is and then adjust it.
Right. Yeah. In that case, I truly did not care for the outcome. Right? If he got upset with me, there was a vendor right next door, I'd go haggle on that leather jacket. Yeah. So again, putting yourself, I got to scroll up here to my notes. So, be the influencer, right? I knew that, okay, I was in his shop. So in a way, he was the influencer, but I knew there was one right next door. So as long as I remembered, I'm not desperate. I have options. I can leave. And as soon as I step over that threshold, he now loses his power. So, But in America, we're not raised that way. We're trained that the price is the price and don't haggle. But then when you get into business, everything is negotiation.
Yes.
And I think it cripples people. You know, they don't know what to do.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I agree. And I mean, this is the key thing, that when you're in negotiations, it can be very emotive. So if you've got simple little things that you can do by just changing your posture and recognizing that you're getting stressed. I have a thing called the possibility pause, which I'll share with you, because it's just something really, really simple. And all my executives do it. I've got Air New Zealand, strategic managers, your CEOs. Everybody does this. It's so simple. People,
Is it the possibility pause?
It's called a possibility pause, and it's think success possibility pause. It's something that I created. It's something very simple. Over my years of training, a very simple thing that you can inject into your day to manage your state, alongside of a power pose, so that when you're in negotiation and somebody fires something at you and it's not what you're wanting, instead of being in reaction or like a stunned rabbit, you can actually sort of go, okay, I'm having a reaction, right? So basically you can do this sitting, standing, whatever it is, and you just literally put your hand on your stomach. Make sure both feet are on the floor, because, if you're sitting down, often people cross their legs. Again, you're diminishing your energy. You're not grounded. Your foundation is not firm and strong. So mentally, you're not getting the information coming through. You're not grounded.
Right.
So both feet on the floor, and actually feel your feet on the floor. When you get that hit, take a breath down to your stomach and hold it for 3 seconds. And then blow out whatever's stressful. Now, you can do this really subtly in a meeting. When you do this 3 times, it's just a possibility pause. Then you can start to inject things like questions like, what do I need to do now? Because you've got oxygen to the brain to allow you to think clearly. Because what happens often when we're stressed is, we hold our breath, we stop the oxygen going to our brain. We can sometimes feel a bit busy, we get tighter, and we don't think clearly. So to actually have this be of value when you're in a stress situation, you need to actually inject this and incorporate this process, simple as it is, into your everyday.
Right.
So, you could set an alarm on your phone, because it's not a habit at this particular point, and at every natural stop point. So it doesn't add another thing to do in your day if you're busy. Most people eat, It's something you can add to that. So before you eat, you just do a possibility pause. You take that breath in and maybe think about, what is your focus? What is your goal for the day? I want to be focused, productive, relaxed. That's an example. Imagine breathing that in, hold it in your stomach for 3 minutes. 3 seconds. 3 minutes, you'd be dead. And then blow out anything that's not that. So it's really, really simple. But you actually get yourself prepared that that's the norm. So when you do get an emergency situation, you can just put your hand on your stomach. Your body, your brain, everything naturally knows, I can go into this quick, calm state to be more effective, increase my performance, see what's going on clearer with the client, be able to adapt my behavior to positively influence the situation, just by taking that little gap and creating a new possibility. And then you can start asking yourself effective questions, or whatever it is that you need to do. Adapt your posture, change your position, get them open, get them moving. But it stops you going into,
Right.
And it's so simple that people don't realize how powerful it is, but it is incredibly powerful. Just a simple little thing like that. And this is part of the poise process that we do, which is, poise, posture, recognize your posture, look at how you're coming across. Think about doing a power pose before you go into really any situation as a start place. So you start to increase your confidence levels, lower stress levels.
Right.
And even do that before you come into home, when you debrief from work. And then a possibility pause. You imagine the difference how you feel. You've increased your confidence, but then you've got really centered and calm with that centering breath. So you can start to see what's going on with other people very clearly, where they are in reaction or they're in response. Then you're more likely to be engaging with other people. You're open, you're warm, you're inviting.
Right.
And that I is about in touch. So P is posture, O is open, I is get in touch with yourself first so that you can engage fully with the other person. And then the S is smile, something really, really simple. But, so many people say smile. And of course, we've got this busy life. It's rarely we get genuine smiles when we're in business situation.
Right.
So, how can you initiate a genuine smile, do you think?
Well, I throw jokes out all the time. And, humor is kind of like dynamite. A little goes a long way.
Yeah.
And it's hard. I don't really teach it, but I encourage people to look into it. And I tell them you can study humor and you can get better. But you got to be careful not to always be a goofball.
Yeah, it's finding that balance, isn't it? It's like everything, really. So people still take you seriously.
Right.
But humor is so important. It's very powerful. And what it also does is increases our endorphins in our body, so we actually relax more. So if you can get the other person in that place, that's really cool. But for you to be able to do that, you've got to get yourself, there.
Right.
So I will say, well, if you want to give a genuine smile and it's a rainy day and you've got to go and see a client and there may be a client that said no 3 times, how are you going to give a genuine smile?
Right.
It's not always that easy, and this is real life at the end of the day.
Right.
And so I always say, think of 3 things, 3 funny things that make you laugh, or watch something on your phone or something just before you go in that lightens you up, or think about 3 things that you're grateful for in your life, because that's always going to put that warm glow through you.
Right.
Because, a genuine smile reaches the eyes. And that's the only way you can actually do that is actually by feeling good.
Gotcha.
So it's actually initiating that within you.
Right.
So this is part of the poise process. Think about smiling before you go into that environment so that you've raised up your energy so that you are attractive to other people. You're more engaged. They don't want someone that's, stressed or upset or whatever it is that's invading their space.
Right.
And the other thing is thinking about the space, the space that you have between you and another person. What is their personal zone? This is really important, especially amongst cultures. And this is where rapport falls down really, really quickly, because people aren't aware of the different types of cultures. Now, different cultures could be not just, somebody's American, somebody's New Zealander, somebody's from Asia. It can be somebody's from the city, somebody's from the country.
Right.
If someone's been brought up in the country, they tend to like a lot more space around them. So if someone steps back from you, don't keep stepping into their space. They're giving you a lot of information about, hang on a minute, you might need to give them a bit of breathing space.
Right.
Because, you can have the perfect pitch and you can ruin it by actually invading someone's space.
Well, they usually know I'm serious when I grab them by the tie and yank them down and put a pin in their hand. Do you recommend that?
Well, that's one option.
All right, I was going to ask you something. I made a note earlier. Zig Ziglar, he would always talk about, and I've seen others talk about be, do, have.
Yes, yes.
And I believe it's more of do, become, have. Right? I think, and I learned this when I got into sales training when I was a client. And the guy taught me, you may not feel like making that prospecting call, but do it anyway.
Yeah.
And as you do it and you have some failures, but you start to have some wins, then you become that confident salesperson that you were acting like in the beginning.
Yeah.
And then you can have, right? It's kind of that evolution, because I'm always, my claim to fame, if I have one, is I do, and I push them out of the nest. You will learn to fly on the way down to the ground, trust me, but you will never fly sitting in the nest, and I think too many people fail because they never really start.
They don't take action. Yeah. And I totally agree with you, and I think part of being is doing. I think they interlap because, like you say, to become something, you have to do something. I mean, even if you're really scared, now I've given you some possibility pauses and power poses for, some of your listeners, something simple that they can do that starts to elevate their state to then take that action. Mm-hmm. So that's something before they actually go and do the action. They've got something that helps them be present.
Right.
So that could be part of the be do.
Right.
But I agree with you totally. Action, whatever it is, whether it's taking a breath, moving your body, it's one of the most powerful things. Our body language is responsible for between 55 to 90% of the messages we're sending and receiving people, So that's not just how we position ourselves, that's how we feel about ourselves. Because if we don't feel good about ourselves, it doesn't matter. We can act all we like.
Right.
Things are going to give us away. We're not going to come across authentic. And authenticity sells.
Right.
It's simple. Being real, being who you are and being really genuine, people relate to that. Even if they don't like you, they at least respect you.
Right.
And that can get you in the door. Do you know what I mean?
Well, that's the other thing. We always hear people buy from people they know, like, and trust. And I tell people, you know what? At a minimum, they have to trust you.
Yeah.
And the example I always give, when my daughter, she's 10 now, but when she turned 3 in the hospital with a ruptured appendix, and they did not diagnose it correctly for a long time. She was in for a total of 15 days, and like 11 days before they had the surgery. And the doctor that finally did the surgery, I always remember this woman. They spoke very highly of her, Johns Hopkins trained, yada, yada. She had the bedside manner of Hannibal Lecter, And although he was actually kind of nice, when he wasn't biting your face. But anyway, I didn't like her, right? But I trusted her.
Yeah, yeah.
And she made the sale, right? Which was operate on my daughter and get her well. So, at a minimum, they have to trust you.
Yes.
Being likable just helps.
Oh, definitely. That speed things up.
Yeah. Do you think people try too hard to be likable rather than competent? Because maybe it's easier to be likable. But I always tell people in business, when you're dealing with a decision maker, which is hopefully the only people you're talking to, because otherwise you're wasting your time. Yeah. Decision makers, like when I'm at my desk working, I don't like chit chat. No. When work's over, I'll go hang out at the golf course, do whatever, talk sports. But when people call me on the phone and say, "Hey, how you doing?" I'm like, I was doing better till you just asked me that. I got stuff to do, Stop trying to be likable and show me your value.
Yeah.
Scratch my itch.
Yeah.
And then if you keep scratching my itch, maybe I'll like you, but at a minimum, I'll buy from you because I trust you. You're competent. You prove that you can get it done.
Yes.
So, do you think people spend too much time trying to be likable?
I think it's a possibility. I think mainly because a lot of people aren't very confident in liking themselves.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that has to be addressed. Competence will outwin likability. But if you have both, you'll get referrals.
Right.
Rather than have to keep going for the cold calls. Do you know what I mean? So if you can work for both, woohoo, why wouldn't you? But competence, it's no good being likable and then you get in the door and whatever you're offering is rubbish.
Right.
That's not work. Then your credibility just disappears out the window. But it really depends on the person that you're dealing with to a large degree. If you're dealing with a very technical person that is, like you say, a leader, they're going to have, they'll be sort of a more dominant personality. So they will want short, sharp. They want to know your competence, your value first. And then, they're not too bothered about the likability as long as you can do the job.
Right.
But then if you generally, after you've dealt with the first person, you may end up being passed on to the next person that's going to continue you doing work with that company, in which case with those people, you generally need to be likable.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
It's a tier, you know.
Yeah.
But that first person, boom, you've got to make that first impression. You've got to make that influence that you are capable in everything that you're saying. But that also has to be with your body language, because if you're saying, I'm capable, this is my value, yet your body language is, incongruent and saying the opposite, they're going to subconsciously believe the body language. And no, something's not quite right with this person, not sure what it is.
Right.
It just doesn't feel right. Can't put my finger on it, but I'm not going to go with that deal. Even though he's saying all the right things.
Right.
He's saying the right things, but he's not showing I believe what I'm saying.
Right.
I feel what I'm saying. I feel competent.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, really important that we have it, working together as a team. And also not being bullet driven. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
I work with a lot of technical people, engineers, scientists, leaders that, like you say, want short bullet points. But then when they come to engage with other people, sometimes they're delivering the short bullet points and they're not getting team buy-in because they've delivered the bullet.
Right.
Instead of, okay, let's warm this up a little bit, then we can get into the 3 bullet points.
Right.
So it's just recognizing who you're dealing with.
Yeah.
And what their needs are, and then how you adapt to that, but also keep your own authenticity and your own integrity.
That's so funny. 'Cause one of my other 7 deadly sins of selling is the Stepford salesperson. From the Stepford Wives, right? You can't treat everybody the same.
No.
I mean, they all have different itches, right? You got to scratch in a different place.
That's right.
And if you don't identify it, you're not stacking the odds in your favor.
Exactly. So, you being really present to see those differences rather than judgment. I mean, one of the things that I always say when I'm training is one of the first things we need to do if we're going to learn anything or get anything out of a situation is suspend judgment. Suspend judgment of yourself when you go into the environment, suspend judgment of the other person and anything you're going to hear, and just observe and notice as opposed to react. Mm-hmm. Now, to do that, you've got to be really mindful of how you're dealing with yourself.
Right.
And that's not difficult to do. It's like anything. It takes practice. It's like going to the gym. You wouldn't go to the gym once or twice and expect to have a whole load of muscles. It's the same thing, unless you take
Is that the problem? I got to go every day. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, at least 3 times a week for 6 weeks.
Man. Hey, have you ever seen that show Lie to Me?
Yes, it's great.
Is that any good?
Yeah, it's based on Paul Ekman, who he actually originated the most recent studies on microexpressions, which are the facial microexpressions on the face, showing the 7 main emotions. And that's very useful to be able to test. If you're saying to someone, this is my price, and they go, oh, that's a really good price, and they show disgust, it's sort of like their words and their facial expressions are showing something different. So it's like, what about that price is good for you? Then you need to ask more questions.
Right.
Or, we don't have the budget, and they show sad, but they show sad after it's not true. So they do have the budget. So it's really, really useful. So it's about when it comes as well as what it is.
Right. So who was that? Paul who?
Paul Ekman, his name is. Ekman. And he went into Papua, I think it was New Guinea, and he worked for 6 months with tribes people that had never seen, other human beings, basically, because he wanted to see if micro-expressions were universal. In other words, they were saying the same regardless of cultures, because body language and gestures varies. Generally, for different cultures to a large degree. But facial expressions, he found, were exactly the same. So very, very useful, because it doesn't matter what culture you are. When you have an emotion like sadness, fear, happiness, whatever it is, it will show up the same on the face. It might be smaller in some cultures than others, but it will still have the same thing. So the mouth will move, or, someone's scared, it'll have different things going on. So very, very useful when you're doing sales, being able to read these things. But again, you need to be present to be able to do that. It's all about awareness, focus, knowledge, and diminishing stress, so that you are actually in a position to manage yourself and read other people clearly, and then positively influence the situation. Then you're bulletproof.
So if I start binge watching Lie to Me on Netflix all day long and all weekend, I can tell my wife, like, get off my back. This is work.
Yeah, well, it's very useful.
I've seen a couple of episodes, but I'm going to check it out because it is interesting. It
is interesting. And The Mentalist also. The Mentalist is.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, I mean, he does a bit of body language, so that's shown in the States, I'm pretty sure.
I think that's like a current. I don't know if Lie to Me is still going, but
you can get it. I think you can get a video, and they talk about it in there. They don't actually teach you what to do. They'll give you, remember, a little knowledge can be a dangerous thing. I mean, I had one of the security guards at Sky City, and himself and his supervisor came up to me after one of the courses and said, not really sure what's happening here. I'm going into a challenging situation, and it's getting worse. He was supposed to, somebody's fighting or whatever. He was supposed to calm the situation down. And I said, well, tell me what you're doing. And he said, well, I was taught that you mirror body language. I thought, oh, God, what's he done? So he was having people that were getting into fight situations. He was literally mirroring their body language. So, Of course, the situation escalated.
Right.
So I taught him how to actually calm himself down so that he had a big presence that actually was a calming influence as opposed to elevating the situation.
Right.
Because, likes like, as you said. So if you want to connect with someone, mirroring some of their behavior unconsciously helps them feel that you are more like them, in which case they are more likely to trust you, like you, respect you.
Well,
but not in all cases.
I remember, it's probably 6 or 7 years ago, Christmas. Everybody's at our house, and our aunt had a seizure. So everybody, of course, goes bonkers. But two of her children were police officers, so they take control, call 911, and I remember being at the door, waiting for them, and they just pulled up. Guys got out, get their little medical kit, and 2 or 3 of them, they just nonchalantly walked in. I remember thinking, why aren't you running? Because we called you, feels like an hour ago, right? But, 5, 6, 7 minutes, however long it took them to get there, everybody's worried. But then talking about it afterwards, because she came out of it and everything ended up being fine. But as talking with my cousins and all about it, they say, when the first responders respond, everybody is amped up, right? Like those guys that were fighting, and they have to come in and be that calming influence because they can't function at that elevated state because none of us were functioning, right? We're all, other cousins are screaming and yelling, her daughter's, in tears, and they were no help to her in that state.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? And it was amazing learning that story.
Yeah. And, if you go into an environment where you're feeling confident, but you've got that calm, charismatic presence, people are very drawn to you. And you're the one that takes charge of that situation. And if you're in sales, really, you need to be taking charge of the situation, not having them running it.
Right.
So if you're in that state to start with non-attachment, exactly as you've said, you're going in, in an elevated state to have that be a reality that you get a really positive outcome.
Right.
Now, I remember when I first started working with the guys at Sky City, a lot of them were ex-police, 20 years, this, that, and the other. They staunch, been in the game for a long time, knew an awful lot, a lot more than me, certainly about the industry. And the whole body language is perfect. It's like, who's this little girl coming in and telling us what does she think? Who does she think? I mean, it's classic, Right. And so, how I dealt with that was actually I had to show competence. And I said, hey, look, I can see by your body language that, I'm going to have to prove myself. And that's cool. So I'd like to just read you and tell you a little bit about yourself. How do you feel about that? Which is really, that's a great place to be because you're putting them in a position of, most of them said yes, but it's a bit uncomfortable having somebody read you.
Sure.
But and also I had to be very accurate because if I missed something, I was done. Toast at the end of the day.
Right.
But this is how you show competence is actually through actually proving your value.
Right.
And that's also about how you're being and how you're coming across, and that's really, really powerful.
Right.
So yeah, I love what I do, as you can see.
Well, this is fantastic. Where can we send people? When I was talking with you earlier, you said your course is signalstosuccess.com, right?
Yes, signalstosuccess.com. I have an online course there.
Okay.
And it's to help people with sales, with presentation. There's lots of testimonials on there from people that have, increased their referral rates from 7% to 25% in a month. Mm-hmm. They were really not very confident, and then they went to their first couple of networking meetings, got 15 grand's worth of clients. There's some really definite stats of people actually getting very clear results from using the program. It's a year's membership, so people get a whole year to dip in and out of it. Wow. And they get a certification if they choose. It's optional, but it's a definite relationship process that helps you manage yourself, so that you can deal with any situation, basically. And again, it's about practice. That's why I made it for a whole year so that people could go in and out.
Right.
And then how you can influence situations, how you can read other people clearly and change some of those situations so that you create relationships where people want to refer people to you, not just, give you that one sell. They actually want to engage with you.
Right.
And I've also got a free body language cheat sheet if your people would like that, which is one page, just simple little thing which they can get on the body language company website.
Okay. Oh, thebodylanguagecompany.com.
Yeah,
right?
That's it.
Okay.
They can get the free cheat sheet on there if that's of interest for them. And that will, give them some information, and they'll get a few emails that just gives them some tips and things like that.
Okay. And so we will link to that as well. And
Right.
from the saleswhisperer.com/Suzanne-Masefield. And so I'm looking at your site here. So you've got corporate version, you've got an individual version, and trainer version, right?
That's right.
Okay.
So if an individual wants to, buy a membership, but I do a lot of work with corporates where I actually, the membership goes across the whole team, and, quite a few of them, they've put it across the whole company, because then
Right.
everybody's in alignment with each other.
Right.
And you can use it in team meetings and all those types of things. If someone wants to talk to me, I'm happy to have a chat, and I'm happy to come over to America and do some training over there. Love it.
All right. Better you than me. I'd love to come visit, but man, that's a long flight.
It's only halfway to England.
Oh, man.
That's where I come from. So 24 hours.
All right. Well, thank you, Suzanne Masefield, for coming on the Sales Podcast. And so it's morning time for you, right? So
It is. It's now 10 a.m. on Friday morning.
Oh, wow. Oh, yeah. It's already Thursday here. All right. Very nice. Well, thank you for coming on the show. This was fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Wes. Lovely to meet you.
All right. Cheers.
Bye.
What do you think there, huh? Told you some good stuff. She studied, or talking about Paul Ekman, studying micro expressions in Papua New Guinea. What the heck? I love that show, Lie to Me. And so interesting, seeing little things. And I've always said, in my sales training, I talk with people, we always hear that dogs are good at sensing fear, but humans are, I think, 1,000 times better. We know when something just isn't quite right. Maybe we can't put our finger on it. Maybe you don't know micro expressions, and I haven't really studied them either, but I'll pick up little things here and there. But you just see a twitch. You see the shifting of the eyes, the changing of the body posture. I think that was an interesting point that she brought up. Just because somebody has their arms folded, or maybe they're tapping or something, we want to assign meaning to it. But maybe they're just comfortable that way, or they're cold. But look for the abrupt changes. If somebody's tapping, and they stop, or they've been calm all along and they start tapping, it's that shift that's really the key point in all of this. But I think deep down we just notice, and that's why we hesitate from going forward. So you need to pick up on that on your prospects. But again, you need to be aware of yourself. Zig Ziglar always says selling is just a transference of a feeling, and that feeling is confidence. Are you confident? If you're not confident, your prospect is picking that up also. They may not be able to put their finger on it, but they know something's going on. So are you calm? Okay, are you fidgeting? Are you making abrupt changes? Are you outgoing and bubbly and optimistic and positive right up to the point that you have to discuss money and talk about the price? All of those things are subtle little clues that turn on or turn off your prospect and will keep them from buying. Okay, so that's why I said in this, you need to understand body language so you can make more sales. This is super important. I get into this in my training as well on detecting how somebody picks up the phone. How do they answer? Is it noisy in the background? Are they abrupt? Are they bubbly? Can you tell they're on a cell phone? All those little things come in, and you need to pick that up immediately. Okay, you can't be doing this on the fly, and unfortunately, too many people are. Too many salespeople are betting their paychecks literally on their skills or lack thereof. Okay, so if you want to get much better at sales at a very affordable price, please check out my 30-day sales growth, 30daysalesgrowth.com. Enter promo code podcast and save yourself some money, okay, when you check out. But those are 30 individual lessons with audio, video, files you can download, PDFs and Word docs and Excel spreadsheets to help you sell faster at higher margin with less stress and more fun, okay? Selling can be fun. It should be fun. It is hard work, okay, but it's rewarding work. It's valuable work. And so you can have fun while you're working hard, okay? So 30-day sales growth will help you do just that. As always, I thank you for listening. Please leave a few kind words online and on iTunes, Stitcher, wherever it is you listen. And as always, please remember to sell different.